We will now begin the press conference.
Good afternoon. I'm sure you do not expect me to make another budget speech. I think it's important to read the budget speech along with the economic survey, especially the first chapter of the survey. Yesterday, the Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. Rajan, briefed the media on the economic survey, and many of you must have been present here. The economy is indeed challenged in a number of ways. The economic survey lists the challenges, lays out various options before the government. What the budget does is pick on some of those options and say, this is the way we will go forward. But as I said in the last couple of paragraphs of my budget speech, our work does not stop here. The budget is simply one event in a series of events, in a series of actions that have to be taken. Besides, the budget speech can't run beyond an hour and 45 minutes or maximum of 2 hours. There are many things that I would have liked to say, but I could not say because of lack of time. These are issues that we have either addressed or in the process of addressing. And after the debate takes place in Parliament, when I reply to the debate, another set of measures will be announced. Another set of decisions will be announced. Similarly, when the finance bill is taken up for discussion, and the finance bill debate takes place and I speak on that debate, another set of decisions will be announced and another set of measures will be announced. So it's not a one-stage or a one-stop exercise where you come before Parliament and make the announcements and then say, let's meet again next year. It's not, let's meet again next year. We will meet again in Parliament, of course, when another set of measures and decisions will be announced when I reply to the debate, and then again we will meet when the finance bill is taken up. So in that sense, I would urge you to read the economic survey and the budget speech. Secondly, contrary to very spirited debate that took place in the media, which I enjoyed, I must say, we have not come up with any great surprises to either put impossible burdens on any section of the people or to spook any section of the investors or any section of the market. And I've explained why. The economic space was rather restricted. Given the restricted economic space, there is no scope for largesse. At the same time, there is no scope for imposing huge burdens on anyone. That's why I said it is a time for prudence, restraint, and patience. I think of the three words, the most important one is patience. There may be many things that I would have liked to have done, but one must be patient and wait for the appropriate time. And I think the wheel will turn once the investment cycle begins. So one must be patient when the economy is challenged. One must wait for the wheel to turn. And once the wheel turns, then we have a lot more freedom to take action. The main thrust of the budget is to signal to the world and to everyone else that we are following a fiscally prudent path. So the fiscal deficit will be contained. If the fiscal deficit is contained, other deficits will be contained in due course. And I think we have demonstrated our capability to contain the fiscal deficit at 5.2, which is below the mark that I set for myself, 5.3, and for the next year at 4.8. The current account deficit is a little more tricky. Current account deficit cannot be contained by simply compressing expenditure or raising revenues. Current account deficit can be contained only if we are able to export more, or we are able to import less, or we are able to do both. In the short run, importing less is not a very viable option. If we need oil, we have to import oil. If we need edible oil, we have to import edible oil. If we need pulses, we have to import pulses. Sometimes we import even things we do not need, for example, gold. But then there is the passion among our people to import gold, and even if I say we don't need gold, don't import it, very few people are going to listen to me. Therefore, in the short run, it is not easy to reduce imports. In the medium term, yes, some of these imports can be reduced. For example, if we increase production of coal, then we can reduce the import of coal. If we increase production of oil seeds, then we can reduce the import of edible oils. In the medium to long run, the only way to contain the current account deficit is to improve exports. If our exports grow at the same rate as our imports are growing, or faster than our imports are growing, then we can pay for our imports. Then the current account deficit becomes manageable. I've already told the Cabinet as well as the Minister for Commerce that we will fully support measures that he will announce by the 31st of March when he amends the foreign trade policy. We will fully support all measures that will give a boost to exports. So if I have not said too much about exports, it is because I await the amendments to the foreign trade policy. But once those amendments are made, both he and I will come and meet you and explain that we are both on the same page as far as supporting measures to boost exports. Then, of course, there is a question of inflation. I've explained why and how inflation takes place. Monetary policy can only do so much to contain inflation. Fiscal policy must go hand in hand with monetary policy. We can't put the entire burden of taming inflation on monetary policy. Fiscal policy must do its part, which is why we are containing the fiscal deficit. I'm confident that the Monetary Policy Authority will also do its part, consistent with its mandate to tame inflation. It will also address issues of growth. I think 2013-14 will be a better year than 2012-13 in terms of growth, in terms of inflation control, in terms of investment. It will be a better year. In fact, the Chief Economic Advisor and his team have predicted that GDP will grow over 6%. He has given you a band, 6.1 to 6.7. I may add that the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council has also predicted growth next year will be over 6%. So once growth moves over 6%, that is a sure sign that the economy is on the way to recovery. And then the year after, that is 2014-15, we must aim to move growth beyond 7%. So the immediate goal is to move to a growth rate above 6%, then to a growth rate above 7%. Now, I've also explained in the budget, what does growth mean? Growth is not an end in itself. Growth will mean something only if it brings relief and material relief to the people. Education to those who have no access to education, health care to those who have no access to health care, skills to anyone who wants to acquire a skill, jobs to those who are unemployed, security to those who feel insecure. So growth can mean something only if it translates into something which is material. In fact, someone said, God to a hungry man is in the form of food. So growth must be something material, which is why we emphasize human development indicators. The revenues that we generate, the efficiencies that we bring to the system must mean something to the people. And I hope next year it will mean a little more than this year, that there will be more access to education, more access to health care, more access to food, more sense of security. That is the test of good governance, and I'm sure that my colleagues in the government who are in charge of ministries and departments will surely do their bit to deliver the outcomes in respect of the outlays that I have presented in the budget. So these few words, the floor is now open to questions.
Thank you, sir. In keeping with the spirit of the budget, the first questions will go to a woman journalist. Woman journalist, please.
So let me begin by asking you that the expenditure, while over the B it is 29% higher, over the RE it's only 11% higher. We've seen a similar thing in 2012 when the fiscal deficit was 4.6% and expenditure wasn't budgeted, and then the fiscal deficit was crossed and it was 5.3%. Tax buoyancy also you assume 19%, whereas growth is expected to be moderate. So how credible do you think the fiscal deficit plan is, considering that food subsidies only at 90,000 crores, this 5,000 crores over the RE, and also oil subsidies are way less than what the RE was?
I think the numbers are credible. We have worked on the numbers for the last couple of months. You have looked at the numbers over the last couple of hours. Therefore, the numbers are absolutely credible. The fuel subsidy bill is likely to be smaller because we are correcting diesel prices. We have capped LPG prices, subsidies at 9 cylinders. Therefore, there is every reason to believe that fuel subsidy will be lower this year. On the food subsidy also, we have made our calculations, and the normal food subsidy is expected to be about 80,000. And over and above that, for the Food Security Act, I've provided 10,000. But if the Food Security Act requires more money, we will certainly provide more money. But that is a question that has to be addressed after the Food Security Act is passed. I don't have a bill before me, so I can't really say what it will cost. Once the bill is in Parliament, it is passed in Parliament, we can do our sums again. But as I speak to you, I think we have made a correct assessment of the subsidy bills. As far as tax revenues are concerned, in the current year, when the economy is growing at, say, 5%, first half grew at 5.4, second half, let's assume the CSOs turns out to be right and it's 5%. Still the tax revenues are growing at about 16.7%. So next year the economy grows between 6.1 and 6.7. There's no reason to assume that tax revenues will grow at a lower rate. In fact, it will grow at more than 16.7. And we have assumed only 18. Now where does the extra 1 come? The extra 1 comes by the additional resource mobilization. We have stated up front that on the direct taxes and indirect taxes side, we will get about 18,000 crore of additional resource mobilization. So if you add the normal growth rate plus the ARM, it makes up for the 19% growth rate in the tax revenues.
Yes, Supriya.
Sir,
Supriya,
Your budget has been lauded by Economist in India Inc., but markets haven't lapped this up, and this is perhaps unprecedented because your budget is supposed to be market friendly. I think the one big concern is the tax residency certificate, and most people believe that the government needs to give more clarification on that. That is not enough as far as avoidance of tax is concerned. Would you want to see them trade nerves now?
I assume that you are referring to Section 90 capital A. Now in Section 90 capital A, now this may have become like a classroom, so let's try to keep it in very simple language. Section 90 capital A is two parts. One that deals with GAR, subsection 2. That's not relevant for the present because GAR itself will come only on 1/4/2016. The other part of Section 90 capital A is subsection 4, which is already there, and the explanation that has been added. Now the explanation last year was in the memorandum. What has been done is bring the memorandum into the Act. So nothing more has been done. It's possible that the memorandum and the new explanation are worded in a manner that there is a certain ambiguity. It's possible. But let me clarify that ambiguity. All that it is intended to say is DTA, this has nothing to do with Mauritius or any particular country. This has got to do with double taxation avoidance agreements. All double taxation avoidance agreements have two conditions. One is a condition of residency. The other is a condition that the person must be the beneficial owner. These are two separate conditions. For example, in the case of interest income and dividend income, he must be a resident and he must also be the beneficial owner to claim the benefit of. In the case of royalty, he must be a resident and he must be a beneficial owner to claim the benefit of the treaty. In some treaties, beneficial ownership is attached even to other forms of income. So, either one or both conditions will apply to interest, dividend and royalty. All that the section is intended to say is, if you produce a tax residency certificate, mark my words, if you produce a tax residency certificate, that is a complete answer to your status as a resident. But whether you're the beneficial owner is a separate issue. Am I making myself clear? A tax residency certificate only certifies that you're a resident. It does not certify you're a beneficial owner. So whether you're a beneficial owner is a separate condition you'll have to satisfy. That is the purpose of the section, but if the section has certain ambiguity, we can always clarify that.
Do you think the foreign investors will perhaps expecting a more friendly approach after GAR last year, and which is why they're disappointed?
What is the friendly approach? I did not write the treaty. The treaties are written over a period of time by different administrations. The treaties also follow a model. The treaty consists of two conditions, a condition of residency, a condition of beneficial ownership. As far as residency is concerned, we will accept the certificate of residency that he produces from that country. As far as beneficial ownership is concerned, that is a question of fact, maybe a mixed question of fact and law. So we are not doing anything unfriendly to the foreign investor. Since you have to satisfy two conditions, you satisfy the first condition by producing the certificate of residency. You have to still satisfy the second condition where the second condition applies.
Yes, Siddharth, please.
So, since you have sort of not done a hike in excise or service tax, did you consider it, and is there a possibility of a mid-course correction in the next fiscal year? Also, your assumption for the spectrum auction yields, is it on the higher side considering the response and the feedback from industry so far? Thank you.
Well, I don't know what you mean by mid-course correction. Are you suggesting that I increase the excise duty or decrease the excise duty? I mean, I can't predict what mid-course corrections will take place. I can't predict that. But by definition, a mid-course correction can either be an increase or a decrease. So it's difficult to say anything at the moment. At the moment, we are keeping it at the standard rate. Now, as far as spectrum yields are concerned, yes, we have taken note of the fact that this year the spectrum auctions did not yield the amount that was originally assessed. Last year they thought spectrum auctions will give you 40,000 crore, but they've actually given us a very paltry amount of a little over 1,000 crore. But the next year, we have got a written statement from the Department of Telecom, which divides the spectrum revenues into license fees, revenue sharing, and the one-time fee. And the quantity of spectrum that they will auction. It's after they have given us in writing how the cash will flow, we have taken this amount into account. But if there are any unexpected developments, we'll have to factor them later. But the spectrum will be auctioned. It may not be auctioned in the second round, but sometime or other the spectrum has to be auctioned. And if a serious telecom player wants to remain in the Indian market, he must acquire spectrum. He cannot remain in the Indian market without acquiring spectrum. So for the present, there is a lot of uncertainty about the auction, but I'm sure this uncertainty will be resolved and the spectrum will be auctioned. So if the spectrum is auctioned, we should get the money.
So in your budget speech, you spoke about GST legislation, constitutional amendment bill, but there is no roadmap in terms of a deadline for GST, and the same is for DTC. So do you have a timeline in mind for these two tax reforms? And secondly, there is no clarity on retrospective amendment with regard to Section 9, which affects companies like Vodafone. Investors were expecting the budget will provide some clarity in terms of favor of interest and penalty. Are you looking at providing clarity through a circular outside budget?
On DTC, we have set a deadline for ourselves. If you read the speech carefully, you will find that I have said that I hope to be able to bring back the DTC bill to the Parliament by the end of the budget session. So there is indeed a deadline for the DTC. We are working on the DTC. We will bring back the bill to Parliament. As far as GST is concerned, I cannot lay down any deadline. It depends on the state finance ministers. I have gone by their minutes. What I have said in the speech is a faithful reflection of the minutes of the last meeting sent to me by Shri Sushil Modi, the chairman of that group, and the finance minister of Bihar. So I have said, yes, I accept your minutes. The minutes talk about a constitution amendment. They talk about a GST model law, and they talk about compensation. Now I said, I accept your minutes, and to show my commitment to the GST, I have also set aside 9,000 crore rupees as a balance of the first installment. So now the ball is in the court of the state finance ministers. I hope to be able to meet them shortly, as soon as they finish their budget work, and then let's take it forward. But if they are willing to take one step forward, we are willing to take one step forward. We are ready and willing. And if we can forge a consensus, we should have a GST constitution amendment draft and a GST bill draft in a few months. There's no reason why GST should be delayed. And I have shown our commitment by putting aside solid money to show that we are committed to pay the compensation, provided we have the other things in place. What's the other question? You see, we cannot discuss case-specific matters. The amendments that were introduced by my predecessor may have arisen as a result of a judgment of a court in order to clarify an earlier law of Parliament. But Parliament made that amendment. Parliament said our earlier law meant this. The court has taken a different view. We are restoring the original meaning. So that is how that case was sought to be settled. But the case was not settled. When we issued a reminder to Vodafone about the tax liability, they have replied by saying they don't owe the government anything and they would like to take us to arbitration. Since then, of course, we've had discussions. Vodafone has now offered conciliation. And as I said to the media 10 days ago, that matter will go to the Cabinet, whether the Cabinet accepts the offer of conciliation. If the Cabinet accepts the offer of conciliation, the matter will go to conciliation. Conciliation as different from arbitration. Now the larger question of how retrospective laws must be applied in given cases, that's a larger question. That has nothing to do with the Vodafone issue. That is a general question. We have the Dr. Shom recommendation which says, if it becomes necessary for government and parliament to make a retrospective law, mark the language, if it becomes necessary to make a law which has retrospective effect, in such a case, government should collect only the tax and not the penalty and the interest. That recommendation is under consideration.
So, in your speech you have said about direct cash transfer from few districts it will be spreading to the entire country. Does that also mean that it will be applicable to all the subsidies, as in the food, fertilizer and petroleum subsidy and the entire quantity?
Well, not all in one go. We don't have the capacity to transfer all the subsidies in one go. No. What we are saying is, there are three pillars to the DBT. One is the digitized beneficiary list, district-wise, throughout the country for about 600, 700 districts. We need district-wise digitized beneficiary lists under each scheme. That is one pillar. The second pillar is the bank account. For each beneficiary there must be a bank account. The third pillar is the Aadhaar number. I think the first pillar is more or less there. For most schemes, the first pillar is there. But we have now told the ministries and departments, please prepare digitized beneficiary lists for all districts. Not only the first 43 or the first 100, for all districts, please prepare the lists. So the lists are under preparation, they're more or less there. The second pillar is, it appears that rather easily doable. Once the list is available, the banks have assured me they will immediately open bank accounts for those names who are in the list. It is the third one that was lagging behind, but they are catching up, the Aadhaar number. So once these three pillars are in place, as these three pillars get erected, are complete, more and more benefits will be transferred. But as I see, the food subsidy and the fertilizer subsidy will be among the last subsidies to be transferred, because they're more complicated. There are many, many more beneficiaries. Therefore, they are more complex. Our intention is to transfer all the benefits through the DBT, but I think, this is my view, that food and fertilizer will come at the very end, not at the very beginning. No, there are many other payments which ministries, departments are making.
So, apart from oil subsidies, what are the other things that you're looking at, sir, in terms of PCRs, cash transfers? Can you be a little clarify?
All scholarships, all periodic payments. For example, if you pay a pension, that is a periodic payment. If you pay for pregnant women, that is a periodic payment. There is a periodicity about the payment. If you pay the ASHA, that is a periodicity about the payment. So any payment that is periodically done, once a month, once a quarter, can be done under DBT. Then there are some subsidies which are not periodic, but which are immediately amenable. For example, the LPG subsidy is amenable to DBT. It's not periodic. Somebody may claim it after 40 days, somebody may claim it after 50 days, but it is amenable to DBT Because we know the number of beneficiaries under LPG, 12 crore or so. We know their addresses, and once the digitized list is ready, that can be transferred to them. Therefore, there are a large number of other payments of the government which can be transferred under DBT apart from food and fertilizer subsidy.
Sapna, you had a question?
Just a bit of a reiteration on the earlier question on the direct tax code. Sir, you're planning to put the bill towards the end of the budget session. Would there be a possible rollout date in that? Second, a very ambitious divestment target of over 55,000 crores for FY14. How confident are we of achieving that? 40 plus?
Disinvestment.
Yeah,
Talking about disinvestment.
Yes, sir.
I thought we have taken credit for 40,000 by way of disinvestment. The 14,000 comes from residual stake in non-government companies. That is not disinvestment. There are a number of non-government companies in which government has a residual stake. We are talking about sale of that residual stake.
Right, sir. And one more on the massive cuts in planned expenditure for this year. I mean, that's a sizable pooling that you have done of over 20,000 crores. So, what about the capex for, a large number of programs for the current year? I mean, where do you stand on that front? That's one of the ways that you achieved 5.2% actually in terms of fiscal deficit.
But that's been done. 11 months or 12 months are over. We have done that. The next year, we have outlaid 5,55,322 crore. What has been done has been done. What now we have to talk about is what will be done next year.
Yes, Shishir. Coming back.
Sir, you have liberalized Rajiv Gandhi equity saving schemes. You have said 3 successive years. Does this mean that if somebody is investing in 2013-14, he will have to take the benefit in 2015-16 and 16-17, or can he make a break in that? And the other thing is that is this liberalization only for women, because you have used the word she, not he in that speech.
That's the male view of the world. Whenever we use the word he, nobody asks the question, does it apply only to the male? So when you use the word she, you're asking the question. I think you should disabuse yourself for that. I intend to use she more often than he in future.
Yes,
Now, as far as Rajiv Gandhi equity savings schemes is concerned, at the moment, the benefit is only in 1 year. We have been told, and that is the feedback I got, if you want a new investor to come, first-time investor to come, and you give him the benefit only for 1 year, he comes in that year, he gets no other benefit next year, he will go out. He's a new investor by definition, a first-time investor. So if a first-time investor comes to the market to invest, you should then incentivize him to stay on for a couple of more years before he becomes a habitual investor. So if we were saying you come in the first year, you can get a benefit in the second year, successive year, and you can get a benefit in the third successive year. Hopefully in 3 years, he will get used to investing in the capital markets. No, these are 3 successive years.
Shikha, you had a question. Yes.
So you said you'll be approaching the Union Cabinet for conciliation with Vodafone. Will that conciliation require changes in the current tax law? And also you assumed an inflation of 7% for the next fiscal. Why is that?
Separate questions. I don't. See, by definition, conciliation is non-binding. But arbitration is a different cup of tea. By definition, conciliation is non-binding. The conciliators can suggest a way forward, and both sides have to accept it before it can be the solution. So Vodafone has offered conciliation, and I understand the meaning of conciliation. Non-binding, conciliators try to help the 2 sides come to some understanding. The 2 sides may agree, may not agree. But I'm taking it to Cabinet because Cabinet has to accept this offer. It's only when Cabinet accepts the offer that we will go to conciliation. By definition, conciliation is non-binding, and both sides have to agree to the solution suggested by the eminent conciliators.
Sure. So you've spoken about residual stake sale, 14,000 crore you intend to garner from that. Is that referring to the assets that Suti holds, or is that in reference to Hindustan Zinc and Balco? And my...
Both.
Okay, so all put together you intend to garner 14?
No. It's not that we will sell all. If we sell some of whatever you have described, we expect to get 14,000 crore.
Also, sir, the Q3 GDP numbers have come in at 4.5% just sometime last week, like they were.
Yeah, we are aware of that. That's why the growth rate for the whole year is 5. Because the first half was 5.4. The second half must be below 5 if his prediction that 5 is the annual growth rate, isn't it?
But you, the finance ministry said that they wanted, they were expecting the growth rate to come closer to 5.5% for the entire fiscal.
Well, that's the advice that I got, that at the end of the year, the growth rate will be close to 5.5. That's the advice that I've got. But as I said, predicting is always bad, especially predicting the future is always bad.
Sir, CSO has just reported a Q3 estimate at...
That's what she asked, the same question she asked.
So then how confident are you to meet this 6.7% GDP estimate for next year? And a hypothetical question based on that. In case something goes wrong with the GDP estimate next year, so whether this fiscal deficit number of 4.8% is the sacrosanct number, or are you again will be ready to consider the cut in spending, sir?
Thank you. On the growth rate for next year, I'm as confident as my chief economic advisor advises me to be confident. I'm as confident as the advice given to me by the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. I have to go by somebody's advice, okay? So we're as confident as we can be. Now, if the growth rate dips, what happens to the fiscal deficit? Answer is, this year growth rate dipped. But I said 5.3 is a red line that cannot be breached. Likewise, 4.8 is a red line for next year that cannot and will not be breached.
Yes, Pallavi. Your budget is very high on the social quotient. You talked about a Nirbhaya fund, you talked of women, youth, poor. Was there some kind of pressure coming in from the party to go in for these social welfare schemes which upsets your budgeting? Second, the criticism of the food security bill has essentially been that. Where will you get the money from and how it eats into your other funds?
There is no pressure from the party. If there's any pressure, it's my own instincts, my own beliefs and my own leanings. I think we must bring this out into the open and discuss the kind of indignities and insecurities that women face, the frustrations of youth, the huge burdens of the poor have to bear. These cannot be swept under the carpet. We must bring this out and discuss them in the open. And if there are thousands of people in my party who share the same instincts and share the same beliefs, that is why we are in one party. And therefore, what I've said in those 3 paragraphs are my fundamental beliefs. And I'm articulating my fundamental beliefs, and my party supports me fully on that.
Yes,
on the food security bill, I don't know that bill yet. There's no bill at the moment. We've only got the standing committee's report. The bill is being drafted. It's only when the bill is presented to cabinet, then we do an assessment of the cost of the bill. I can put a number in the bill. I cannot put a number today. But in anticipation that the bill will carry an incremental cost, an additional cost, I have provided 10,000 crore rupees.
So you have, levied surcharge on the super rich. Here I am, sir.
Super rich. Are you one among the 42,800?
Let me complete my question, sir.
Are you?
No, I am not.
You are not among them.
But I would like to be, sir.
So do I. I want everyone in this country to aspire. Remember what Deng Xiaoping said? I want everyone to aspire for higher incomes and a higher quality of life. But at the moment, please remember, I have imposed a surcharge on 42,800 people in a country which has a population of close to 128 crores.
Sir, I have not completed my question.
No, you use the word super rich.
Yeah, super rich. Then the other portion is that, you have also increased the surcharge on, companies making extra income, means around more than 10 crores. Similar with foreign companies. Don't you think such steps will actually promote more tax evasion?
No. No, why should they? Our rates are comparable and competitive with other rates. We are not taxing our companies more than they are being taxed in many other jurisdictions. And don't compare Singapore, but that's a category by itself. Look at European countries, look at other countries in the world. Our tax rates are comparable and competitive with other countries. The surcharge that we have imposed for 1 year, I think you're ignoring that part. The surcharge is only for 1 year. And that surcharge adds a small cost to somebody, not somebody who's making losses, not somebody who's making a 1 rupee profit. We're adding the surcharge to somebody who's already making a 10 crore profit. So I don't think it's a huge burden, and I'm quite sure that they will pay cheerfully because it's only for 1 year.
Yes, please.
Sir, I have two questions. So one is that in the budget you said that your direct tax proposals will lead additional revenues of 13,300 crores. So how much are you going to get from the surcharge on the super rich?
Bulk of it is actually, well again, I don't accept the phrase super rich. These are people who have declared an income of over 1 crore. That's the correct description. Now, bulk of it is coming from surcharge.
So could you give us an exact amount?
No, that will depend upon various factors. You see, these are estimates that we make. But after 13,300, the bulk comes from surcharge.
So secondly, sir, a lot of analysts have, cautioned against curtailment of too much of expenditure, saying that it would hurt growth. So we just wanted your comments on that as well.
That's right, I said so. Aggregate demand is boosted by government expenditure. But government expenditure has both good and bad sides. If there is too much government expenditure, then that boosts aggregate demand, it leads to inflation. If there is too little government expenditure, then it affects growth. So as I said in my speech, the skill is in finding the right amount of government expenditure. So there's no quarrel with the proposition that you are laying out. But for the year that is going by, it's already been done. We've already had low growth. It's already done. So what you should now look at is, have we budgeted an adequate level of government expenditure for the next year? And I believe we have. We have budgeted total expenditure of over 16 lakh crore rupees. Of that, 5,55,322 is planned expenditure. For the next year, there is adequate government expenditure.
So if the reaction from the super rich is positive, will you consider extending it for further, more than this year? And also, will you expand the pay?
I did not use the word super rich, and I don't use that phrase at all. Because this budget is only for 1 year, and I'm going to be here only for 1 year.
Sir, in your budget speech, you have announced a public sector bank for women.
You see, why we have limited the surcharge to 1 year is because revenues are under pressure this year. We have said we have to raise some additional revenue to meet the fiscal deficit of 4.8. So we are raising these revenues for 2013-14. But if in 2013-14 growth picks up and moves to say 6.2 or 6.3, that will give us adequate revenues. And the year after, if as I hope growth will go to 7, that will give us adequate revenues. You don't need the surcharge. The surcharge is required only as a bridge. It's like bridge finance, let's say.
So here's the question.
You said that you are here only for 1 year. Should we consider that it's a signal that are you preparing for a bigger role? No. It simply means that I know what the Constitution says. The Constitution says there shall be an election once in 5 years.
Sir, in the budget speech, sir, you have announced a public sector bank for women. So, will this bank only cater to women? And at a time when you have been talking about amalgamation in public sector banks, why need for a new public sector bank?
Well, we think women get a raw deal from many of our institutions, including public sector banks. I mean, there are any number of cases, anecdotal evidence, any number of people have told me that clearly there is a bias to lend to men rather than women. Therefore, we believe that a public sector bank for women would be a good institution that will address issues that are usually ignored by banks, gender-sensitive issues and empowerment issues. If you read my speech carefully, you will find I've said it lends mostly to women. But it can take deposits from anyone. I didn't talk about deposits. Men can deposit in the bank, but the bank will lend mostly to women. It will employ predominantly women. Some men can also be employed. It employs predominantly women. It will address issues of self-help groups, and it will address gender-sensitive issues. This bank will be a reality by the end of October, and as I said, and I walked across and invited Ms. Sushma Swaraj and Mr. Advani and all others to the inauguration in November.
She was actually lauding the proposal of yours when you spoke. Transfer pricing is a can of worms that many people believe, and experts have voiced concern on that. It could potentially be the next car. I know your government is considering a move on this. How soon should we expect a final opinion? Because some companies have alleged it almost amounts to taxing of FDI.
See, you hear one side of the argument and then you come to a conclusion. But that's not correct. Read the OECD document. Read the statement put out by Chancellor George Osborne and Minister Schäuble of Germany. The OECD document says that we cannot allow tax bases to be eroded, nor can we allow multinational companies to distribute their profits in different jurisdictions. Now that's the prevailing thinking in the world. If OECD countries can talk about erosion of tax bases and of distributing profits over different jurisdictions, we should also be concerned. I'm not talking about any individual case. I'm talking about the general principle. As a developing country, we must protect our tax base. Otherwise, what will be taxed? Where will we get revenue? We must also guard against profits being distributed over different jurisdictions. That is the general principle. Now, the individual cases have to be decided in merits. We are not a banana republic. We have a system of law in this country. There is a show cause notice, there is a hearing, lawyers appear, and then a decision is given. That decision can be appealed against. That decision can be further appealed against. In one particular case of Shell, since it involves a large amount of money, it also involves interpretation of a crucial section of Income Tax Act. I have decided to refer the matter to the Attorney General. Now, what more can be transparent and non-discriminatory? The government voluntarily refers the matter to the highest law officer to interpret a section so that we know what the scope of the section is. I think we are going about it without any bias, without any preference, in a very transparent manner, and I sincerely hope when you report these matters, you will also report the government side. We are not making any prejudgment about tax liability.
Sir, your budget is termed as the expenditure budget.
What budget?
Expenditure budget. Instead of the buoyancy, considering the lack of buoyancy on the tax sides, direct and indirect taxes,
the apprehension is that it could induce the upward revision of interest rates.
I mean, I don't know. I don't understand the argument, so I really can't answer that. I don't see why it should induce upward revision of interest rates. I don't understand it.
Sir, you yourself consider that there is a pressure on the revenue side this year, this particular year. That's why there is the apprehension that the government will not be able to garner the required taxation revenue, and the expenditure is huge. Expenditures are high. That's why it will keep biting in the banking industry to upward revision of interest rates.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the argument.
Sir, you talked about the definition of FDI and FII in your budget speech. The FDI document already has a fairly comprehensive definition of what constitutes, FDI. So will that definition be now replaced by the definition that you are suggesting? And secondly, some clarification on what constitutes a beneficial owner as far as DTA is concerned.
You see, as far as FDI and FII is concerned, what we have said today is an internationally accepted practice. Many jurisdictions have accepted it. If it's below 10%, it is treated as FII. If it's above 10%, it is treated as FDI. It could be 10% of voting power. It could be 10% of shares. There are various variations. There are a number of variations on that. So what I've said is, in line with international practice, we lay down the broad principle. It's a broad principle. It's not a definition. It's a broad principle. If it's below 10%, it is FII. If it's above 10%, it's FDI. Now, we will appoint a committee now to look into how the broad principle should be applied in different sectors and how it should be defined. All that the committee will work out and come back. What we have laid down is a broad principle. See, beneficial owner, again, that is a legal phrase. The beneficial owner must be the person who is entitled to the benefit of the gain. For example, I can have an agent and I can invest through an agent. The dividend check or the interest check may come in the name of the agent, but the agent is not the beneficial owner. I am the beneficial owner. Agent and I may have an agreement that he will receive the check and pass it on to me. Agent may be the resident of a particular jurisdiction. He is a resident, but he is not the beneficial owner. The beneficial owner is somewhere else. Therefore, all DTA agreements, in fact, I've seen quite a few today, DTA agreements clearly stipulate two conditions: residence and beneficial owner. In some cases, it's one condition. In some cases, it's both conditions. For example, in the case of royalty, isn't it? Royalty is both conditions: residence plus beneficial owner. In the case of interest also, I'm told, it is two conditions: resident and beneficial owner. Therefore, there is a clear distinction in law between a person who's a resident and a person who's a beneficial owner. The person may be the same person. I could be resident and beneficial owner. I could be only resident and somebody could be the beneficial owner.
Yes, please.
Sir,
In the front, please. Front row, please. Please wait. Front row, please. Yahan dijiye, please.
Sir, in Budget 2013, you've introduced withholding tax on profits distributed by unlisted companies by the way of share buyback. Do you think it's going to be detriment to the interest of the investors, particularly foreign investors, with this particular move?
But these are unlisted companies. By definition, they're unlisted companies. They're not listed companies. Unlisted companies have several layers or levels, and instead of distributing dividends, they distribute it as buyback of shares. These are closed transactions. I have to protect my tax base, and this applies only to unlisted companies, not to listed companies. So I don't think there should be any cause for worry.
Okay, final question. Sunil, you have a question? Sunil, probably.
I just wanted to know about, the political reaction has been on expected lines from the various opposition parties. But what is the cause of concern, and what you said in your opening remarks is that you are ready for some further measures The Samajwadi Party, Mr. Mulayam Singh, says that he will oppose this budget, he will move cut motions if required, and he terms it anti-poor and against anti-farmer. So how do you respond to that? Because politically, you have to get this budget through.
No, the budget will pass. There's no need to have any concern on that ground. The budget will pass. The finance bill also will pass. Let the debate take place in Parliament. Let me hear the objections on the floor of Parliament, and we will answer the objections on the floor of Parliament. But I'm absolutely confident that budgets will pass. Now, why all budgets in the past have passed too?
The anti-farmer, anti-poor that he is commenting on.
Let them say it on the floor of Parliament. Let me hear it from people on the floor of Parliament, and we will answer that. We will answer why the budget is not anti-poor or whatever.
So it's a supplementary question here, sir. Are you hopeful people will, it's a final budget?
Vodafone's case, Dr. Showman also made recommendations on the unintended consequences, for instance, in direct transfer in case of listed companies, etc. Those have also not been considered in this budget. So are you looking at the other recommendations as well?
I have said Dr. Shom's committee's recommendations on how government should deal with liabilities arising out of retrospective laws is under consideration. There has been no occasion now to take a decision on that. When we take a decision on that, we will take into account his recommendation. Namely, in such a case, you should only collect the tax. Please remember, he does not say give up the tax. You may collect the tax, but since you are doing it retrospectively, you should waive the penalty and the interest. That recommendation will be considered at an appropriate time.
But during UPA 1, you are very...
But the government's intent at this point is to crack down on the Mauritius route, because you've explained beneficial ownership, but there will be several companies that are just for post office operations, and is the government's intent to target the Mauritius route?
See, this clause, this statement of tax residency certificate being necessary but not sufficient was there last budget in the explanatory memorandum. This time it is being brought into the Act. As I explained, the purpose of that amendment or the purpose of that clause in the memorandum last year was that a certificate of residency only certifies that you're a resident. It cannot certify anything else. Therefore, if there is another condition like beneficial ownership, that condition must be independently satisfied. That is the meaning of the phrase, necessary but not sufficient. If there is any ambiguity in the way the explanation has been worded, which gives rise to any ambiguity, we can certainly clarify that. It's only an explanation. If an explanation has not explained sufficiently, we will explain it better.
Yes, Shekhar. Capital gains in tax treaty?
That depends upon the DTAA.
Will that apply in the case of India-Mauritius DTAA?
No, that we'll have to look into the DTAA of Mauritius. Each DTAA has different clauses for interest, for dividend, for royalty, etc., etc. Each DTAA prescribes the condition for getting that benefit of the treaty. In some cases, the condition is only residence. In some cases, the condition is residence plus beneficial ownership. So we have to look into each case to find out what the treaty says. And that is what will apply. This explanation only says, if you have a certificate of residence, that is certifying your residence. End of the matter. It is not intended to say anything more. But if there's any ambiguity, as I said, we added an explanation. If there's any ambiguity, we can always clarify that explanation. We can change the words. What we are trying to say is, if you produce a certificate of residence, it certifies your residence, period.
So because there is a lot of apprehension and in the market over whether the TRC under the Circular 782 will that apply or not?
See, the problem is you hear one or two people who come on your channel and then come to the general conclusion that there is an apprehension in the market. I mean, how did you come to this conclusion about the whole market in a matter of a couple of hours? If somebody has expressed any apprehension, here I am clarifying that apprehension can be addressed. What we have added is an explanation. If the explanation does not explain sufficiently, we will explain the explanation. Well, I'm not an expert in the market. Maybe you are.
So, just a small viewpoint on this matter. Some more experts are saying that probably this should also have been deferred because GAR has been deferred. So what is the point of bringing
GAR is nothing to do with what we are talking about. GAR is a separate chapter, chapter 10 capital A. GAR is dealt with under section 92 capital A, under section 90 capital A subsection 2. GAR is nothing to do. What we are talking about is the other provisions are dealing with double taxation avoidance agreements, whereas I explained each agreement requires certain conditions to be satisfied before the person can avail of the benefit of the agreement. And I've explained it, I think, more than once, and I think it's quite clear.
Just a moment.
Hello, sir. I believe government has a cash balance of about 1 lakh crore. Still, you have to borrow about 6.29 trillion rupees. Isn't this kind of borrowing crowding out private borrowers? And what do you intend to do with that kind of cash balance?
Well, if we have 1 lakh crore, they haven't told me that yet.
That's from RBI Deputy Governor. Just in Mumbai.
Just a moment. That's a light-hearted remark. See, please remember that in April there will be huge outflows. There will be immediate March and April. There will be huge outflows. So it's not unusual for government cash balances to be built up in the month of February, because in March and April the outflows are usually huge. So we have to anticipate the outflows in March and April and build up cash flows. I think if you ask me this question in end of April, the answer will be very different.
Yes, please.
The explanation of the TRC, what will the impact be on Circular 789?
There is no impact on 789. 789 talks about a certificate of residency. And if somebody produces a certificate of residency, that is evidence that he is a resident.
Oh, yes, okay.
So, as I said, there are two different conditions in the DTAs. I don't know how many of you have seen a DTA recently. How many of you are familiar with the language? So don't go by one person's understanding of what the issue is. He probably has a genuine apprehension. I'm not denying whoever commented on this does not have a genuine apprehension. But that is why here I am explaining. Residency is one condition, beneficial ownership is another condition. If you produce a certificate, you're a resident, yes, you're a resident, end of the matter. But whether you're a beneficial owner is a separate issue.
During UPA 1, you have loan waiver and NREGA. These two schemes help you to renew your political mandate in UPA 2. So many people expected you will have a populistic kind of budget. Are you hopeful this budget will help you to get back power in 2014?
Well, see, your question is loaded with a number of phrases which can be interpreted differently. I mean, what is quote-unquote populist? So I don't think we should get into a debate on what is populist, what is not populist. All I can say is the people of this country know what is good for them. At the appropriate time, they will vote according to what they think is good for them. Last time, if they voted for us, they must have come to that conclusion because they must have come to the conclusion that the UPA is good for them rather than any other political formation. I have no doubt in my mind come 2014, the people of this country will come to the conclusion that a UPA is good for them rather than any other rival formation. Now, how is this conclusion arrived at by millions of people? Millions of people draw this conclusion for a variety of reasons. I mean, nobody can sit here and say they've drawn this conclusion for this reason or that reason. But overall, I'm totally confident that they will come to the conclusion that the UPA one is better than any other rival political formation.
Sir, one of the NDA...
Just 1 moment, please. Somebody is waiting. Yes, please.
So what would you identify as the biggest risk factor facing the assumptions that underpin the budget?
Risk factor to what?
To the whole host of assumptions underpinning the budget, both on the revenue side and the expenditure.
Risk factors are different. What is the risk factor on the revenue side? What is the risk factor on the expenditure side? These are very different risk factors.
Is both the revenue and expenditure separately?
Well, the most difficult to assess risk factor is the external sector. Now, I can't predict the external sector. What will happen to Europe? What will happen to the United States? What will happen to global growth? What will happen to oil prices? So that's something which is beyond our control. So the external sector is indeed a risk factor. On internal matters, I think we have made a broad assessment. There are some risks, but there are no extraordinary risks. We will deal with the risks as they come. The one risk that is beyond my control is the external factor.
Sir, at the end,
I'm just coming this side.
Sir, while giving relief to the small taxpayer, you have restricted yourself by giving a 2,000 rupees concession rather than revising the threshold limit. What is the reason behind that?
I said it in that speech. If I raise the threshold limit, several thousand taxpayers will go out of the tax net. And if you raise the threshold limit, the benefit will go not only to the first bracket, it will also go to the second bracket and the third bracket. Therefore, we said the same effect can be achieved by not raising the threshold limit, but giving the relief to the first bracket. A 10% inflation leads to the conclusion that they deserve a relief of 2,000 rupees. That relief has been given.
So surprisingly, one of the NDA partners, Nitish Kumar, has praised your budget, especially for Nalanda and the special status provision change. So do you think that you have earned him as an ally for 2014? And in fact, he has thanked 7 times on camera. 7 times he said, "Thank you, Mr. Chidambaram. Thank you, Mr. Chidambaram."
Well, why are you sad that he's thanking me? I mean, try to put a happy face. I think Mr. Nitish Kumar has certain concerns, and I think what we have done perhaps addresses some of those concerns, and I'm happy that he has taken a balanced and non-political view of the budget and has thanked me for what he thinks is due. I'm grateful.
Okay, the final question, please. The lady here. The lady here, please. Yeah.
Sir, there is voluntary compliance arrangement for service tax in the budget. There is an argument for a similar scheme for income tax also. So why did you consider it for service tax and not for income tax?
No, there is no case for income tax. I'll tell you why. We have now largely computerized the income tax system. We have got the CPC in Bengaluru, and we've got the CPC TDS in Vaishali. Now income taxpayers must know that there is no scope to hide your income. It won't pay to hide your income. It's much better to disclose your true income and pay your taxes. I did a VDIS in 1997. There is no case for any amnesty or any kind of voluntary compliance scheme for income tax. It's highly computerized now. It's transparent. No human intervention. The algorithms take care of the assessment. Therefore, people who have to pay taxes must pay taxes. Service tax is a very different tax. It is a very benign administration. In fact, there is no provision even to prosecute or punish anyone today. It was administered with a very light touch, because that was designed to be that way. Because it's a new tax, we didn't want heavy-handed regulation. Now what we find is, over the years, the number of registered service tax payers is 17 lakhs, but the actual number filing returns is only 7 lakhs. The gap is growing. Therefore we thought we should give them one chance to come clean, so that they can come and pay their taxes for the last 5 years. So that is a limitation period, 5 years. Pay your taxes for 5 years, and we will then waive the penalty and the interest. It's one chance for everyone to come into the service tax then. Service tax has come to stay. Nobody can remove service tax. If the GDP, 55% of GDP is services sector, how can service tax go? So service tax has come to stay. We are giving an opportunity to all the service tax collectors and payers to come into the tax net. It's a great opportunity, and I would appeal to the people to avail of this opportunity and regularize their businesses.
Sir, what's the benchmark of food you have taken for the petroleum subsidy of 65,000?
Well, it's the current price, the price prevailing in the last 2 weeks, roughly $110.
But next year the budget, full budget आएगा या supplementary demand budget आएगा?
These are not matters of opinion or choice. These are all in the Constitution. There will be an election next year, and in the 2 months that we have before the election, you can only present a vote on account, and it will be therefore a vote on account. An elected government can only present 5 full budgets, and we have presented the 5th one today.
Sir, have you not ignited the debate of the gender-based budget celebration by creating the public sector bank exclusively for women?
If I have ignited a debate, I am happy I have ignited a debate. Just a moment, listen to me, please. You have asked a question, let me answer. I am happy to have ignited a debate, if that is your question. I am happy that we have announced the National Women's Bank, and I think it will go a long way for gender empowerment and addressing gender issues. I am proud of that.
With that, friends, we come to the end of today's press conference. Thank you very much for being here.